Alongside Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Brett Hubbs, I'm Austin Price for the Rocky Top Roundtable. Guys, we've started quarterback with this thing every week for the last few weeks. We're going to shake it up this week. We're going to start with the other side of the ball that's kind of giving Tennessee a chance to have less than great quarterback play and still have a chance to win football games. Let's talk Tennessee's defense. Where's Tennessee gotten better?
Well, I think everywhere, but you certainly look at the front four, and I think the way the front four has played on the defensive line, some of the things that they've done there to change it up and to be successful has let the back end play better. But Jesse, I think you look at the guys who are playing faster, Sean Schamberger, one of those. I think part of it's just year two in the system as well.
It's year two in the system. You know, it's the youth of some guys like Henry To'oTo'o and some others playing better. But I think Jeremy Pruitt would say himself, the difference with this defense now is that they're forcing more turnovers than they were in the beginning of the season. They have some of their better players back. Bryce Thompson missed the first couple games. He's now kind of coming into his own after he struggled in that Florida game. 3 interceptions on Saturday. Danny Batuli missed the 2 losses to Georgia State and BYU. He's now playing, you know, at around an all-SEC level. So when you talk about the return of those guys, you're having guys like Darrell Middleton and Aubrey Solomon, the transfer from Michigan, and kind of coming into their own. Rob, it's kind of all coalesced to this is just a better defense than it was to start the season.
It just jumps out at you when you watch. I mean, there's so much. They're playing with so much more confidence. I think that's letting them play faster. It shows up. You mentioned the turnovers, which last year that was a real weak spot. Still, I mean, they're not great by any means, but they are so much better than they were that last Saturday in August against Georgia State. It just jumps out at you when you watch them.
Remember this too. Jeremy Pruitt after the Florida game was lamenting the fact that they could generate no pressure up front. Got nothing going with their defensive front. Last 5 games, 16 sacks.
The defensive line's improvement, and I know they're bringing pressure from other areas, but they continue to amaze me at how much development they've gotten in the last 6 weeks. You play a Kentucky team, guys, that probably going to play Lynn Bowden a lot at quarterback, but they do have their what was their backup to start the year, the transfer back healthy. Expect to see him some Saturday night, and they'll use Bowden in spot duty.
I think it depends on how they go with Bowden. I mean, if it's like Missouri and Tennessee's defensive front can't control the gaps and they let big gaping holes like Missouri had, Rob, then I think they're going to line up and keep running it in out of the Wildcat because it's their best offense.
I just don't think they're very good on offense no matter what they do. One thing that jumps out at me, and they're not a big passing team. They've thrown fewer passes than anybody in the SEC. They've also given up the second most sacks of anybody in the SEC, which does not tell you much about their offensive line. And they have a reputation for being a good running team. They're really not. They're 10th in the league, 12th in the league in rushing yardage. I really feel like it's a one-dimensional offense that I think Jeremy Pruitt will be able to get a handle on it. Now, I don't know if Tennessee can score, but I think this is going to be a low-scoring game on a very cold night.
Yeah, well, and this was a one-dimensional offense a year ago that Tennessee had a beat on as well. I mean, and that was with Terry Wilson at quarterback. You had Benny Snell, one of the all-time leading rushers, obviously for Kentucky, and so the fact that Tennessee was able to shut those guys down, and this is even more of kind of a one hand behind their back attack. I think you got to like the Vols' chances. I'm sure that Jeremy is going to kind of watch a lot of what Kirby Smart in Georgia did in terms of so much Wildcat if Bowden is back there. It'll change a little bit with the RPO stuff if Sawyer Smith is the quarterback. But this is a matchup I think Tennessee, pretty much across the board has to feel good about defensively.
And this may mean something, it may not, but the line opens up at 3, moves to 1
I was surprised,
24 hours.
yeah.
4-point swing,
And now now it's a pick 'em. I mean, I was surprised that Tennessee was that big of an underdog, opening, and clearly the experts out in the desert, decided that was not the case.
Clearly, they know who's playing quarterback for Tennessee Saturday. I'm not sure any of us do. I'll say this: to me, it's hard to, I know Maurer's, gotten healthier and gotten more reps this week and all that stuff. But it's clear to me that the guy that they really trust to, get him in and out of the huddle, and even though he's not played great at times this year, but Jerry Garantano continues to be a guy that the coaching staff goes back to. And would be shocked if he doesn't see a good portion of work on Saturday.
Well, I think it's Jared and then quarterback X, and the question is who's the X? Is it going to be Shrout, who clearly has the shortest leash, or is it going to be Maurer, who didn't have a good week? Jeremy Pruitt saying on Wednesday on the teleconference, Jesse, that it wasn't just the lack of #1 reps last week. It was the cumulative effect of the week before. They didn't practice at all, kind of fallen behind that way. So I think it's an end of the week decision based on who they're most comfortable with starting, and then going to the pen, so to speak, and pulling out Jared. That's what it feels like their plan is.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I would be stunned, honestly, if #2 was the guy that started the game with the way Tennessee's kind of treated him as this bullpen or six-man shooter. And if it's going to be way colder than it is on Saturday night in Kentucky than it was a week ago, and Jeremy Pruitt said part of the reason Jarrett didn't start a week ago was because of the cool weather and the slick ball. I have a hard time believing he's going to take the first snaps out there. My guess is that based on his play earlier this season before the 2 head injuries, one would surmise that Brian Maurer would get the nod over JT Shrout. But again, it's going to be determined on the practice field. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear with this staff, depending on how you practice, it will be kind of garner whether you play a lot on Saturday. And they don't always equate to, playing well on Saturday, but they put a lot of stock in, how you practice, Monday through Friday.
And Rob, I think that was some of the frustrations that you heard with Jeremy Pruitt on Monday. Is there was a regression a little bit with Jared when he talked about getting them in bad plays, not getting them into the right run play, running into the teeth of a defense, and things like that, where I think they felt like he had managed the game so much better against South Carolina. He had managed it better against Mississippi State in the second half. That's the maddening part for Jim Chaney. It's not just the interception in the end zone at the end of the half. It's the management of the game. Jared's the most capable of doing that, but sometimes he doesn't do that well enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the stat from Peter Burns with SEC Network, but the frustration is that Jarrett may not be doing it as well as they want, but he's doing it so much better than JT Shrout. Tennessee averaged a little over 4 yards a carry when Jared was in the game on running plays, averaged like 2.2 yards per carry when JT Shrout was in the game, and that's not all on JT, but I think that's a reflection of who's seeing what, who's calling. But that doesn't mean Jarrett's doing it as well as he can. I think the way I think of it is that Jarrett's floor is higher than Shrout or Maurer, but both of their ceilings are higher. They could get to places.
And right now Tennessee's in a position where they want the highest floor.
But I do wonder if Shrout, this was a missed opportunity for him on Saturday. I mean, I had it in my review piece, the fact that he was able to get the start because they did not feel that Brian Maurer was ready. He gets yanked after one throw where he throws across his body, gets to start the second half, first drive, nearly throws another interception. I do kind of wonder, guys, if he might have missed his window in this quarterback race, and it's going to be 18-2. The last 3 games of the season as Tennessee goes towards bowl eligibility. The big thing we haven't talked about is going to be the offensive line. I mean, that's regardless of who's back there, they have to perform much better than they did. Yeah, they have to perform much better than they did against UAB, where they gave up all sorts of pressures, and Tennessee had 0 room to run, 16 runs, 1 yard or less.
Yeah, you got to have. I mean, Kennedy's got to play much better than he did a week ago. Wanye Morris has to bounce back after an ugly game that he had against UAB. Because it's not just the run game, too. I think Jared sometimes starts to peak the wrong places. If he's getting hit a couple of times, he's starting to protect himself, not getting his eyes downfield quick enough, which is why he's late with some throws sometimes too. So they've got to play much better up front. They got to get back to the front that was playing well at Alabama against South Carolina, not the front that played a week ago against UAB.
All right, we'll get you out the door with this. Jeremy Pruitt against Mark Stoops' offenses has had a lot of success. The last 2 years, 6 points, 7 points respectively.
The year before that, 3 points. Last 3 times, not reached double digits.
But the last 2 were Eddie Grant as the coordinator specifically. One time Pruitt was at Alabama, the other time was at Tennessee. So he's had success against Mark Stoops' type teams. Can you correlate at all?
Well, I mean, I think he's got a beat on an offense that's been one-dimensional. I think is what you look at with Eddie Grant and the fact that they've just struggled to find anybody that can throw the football down the field. That was why Kentucky fans had hope, early in that Florida game, because Sawyer Smith pushed the ball down the field with some of the jump balls and that type of thing. They've just not been able to do that since. So I don't want to take anything away from Coach Pruitt. I think he's got a good beat on what they do, but it's a one-dimensional type offense that Tennessee's been going against, and I think he'll have a good beat on them Saturday night if they indeed come out with Bowden as their Wildcat quarterback, and that's the way they play the game.
It's Tennessee and Kentucky, 7:30 on Saturday night from a cold Commonwealth. It's going to be cold. For Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price.